To finish this lecture about elementary programming, I would like to talk about a number of small topics. The first one, let's consider this area circle calculation problem, which we did something very similar in your Lab 0 Java tutorial. If you haven't done this, please do so soon, so you will actually appreciate more the discussion I'm having over here. Okay, very easy. I don't need to waste your time. So that's basically what I want to compare two versions of the solution and then make some remark. So we declare two variables, radius and area, and then we simply assign radius into some integer literal. We are not taking any input from somewhere else, maybe from the keyboard. And then we simply calculate the area using the formula, and then we simply print them out. Very easy, right? However, it will be much more flexible and then to make the program more general, because currently the program is only calculating the area of the circle of radius 20, but we want to give the flexibility for the user who's using your program to really enter the radius of the circle. So that's why we got a second version over here. The only difference is you can see the radius right now is actually from input next double. So this is a scanner that we did in Lab 0. You can refer to the tutorial videos there. Let me make some remark over here very quickly. You can see we actually got two ways to really calculate the circle of the area of the circle. You can see version number 1, we don't have any user inputs. You can see double radius over here is simply fixed to some amounts, and then we calculate accordingly. So that means every time that you actually want to change the calculation, you will have to modify this particular value over here in your program. So that means your program is rather unstable. It's kind of fragile to changes always whenever you want to calculate the area of a different circle. On the other hand, the second version we have, it will be with the user input. So again, sorry about it, it's a typo here. So with. So it will be with user input. So let's see exactly how you can incorporate user input. You can see over here we say double radius over here, and then we say that it's going to be read from input the next double, and then we calculate accordingly. That's point number 1. It's definitely much more flexible for the user to specify the radius of the circle they really want to calculate, point number 1. And point number 2, remember for this particular calculation over here, right? This calculation, okay, we would like to reuse this block of code over and over whenever we want to calculate the circle of the area of the circle. In that case, what we did is, remember this is in the console application package, right? This is a console application, and we simply just go into the model package, and then we simply create some class over there, and then we simply factor these lines of code into a method, right? To, for example, get area, double get area, and then that one there has a double, and then circle C, for example, radius R, and then we're going to put these two lines of code into over here. Of course, with return statements. You can see your Lab 0 tutorial videos for a little bit more details. I just want to remark. Okay, so definitely version number 2 will be a much better version to have. Number 1, for flexibility from the user, and number 2, you can really factor out your lines of code into a method that's actually in the model package. In that case, you can reuse the method whenever you want. Whenever you want to reuse the method, you can simply call that. Right? We talk about methods and calling methods throughout the semester, so don't worry. For week number 1, just study whatever we have given to you as an example. Okay, so that's about the calculation of the circle area. So now just a reminder, so you can use next int to reading some integer. You can use next double to really reading a double floating point number. Or you can also use next line to really read in a string value from the user, right? So if you are required or you are expected to write console application, so these are the methods that should really be handy to you. All right, so case study number 2. I will let you read the problem over here. Basically, you're given the integer number for seconds. You want to convert that into how many minutes and seconds it is worth, right? For example, if you got 200 seconds, it should be 3 minutes and 20 seconds, right? So 3 minutes will be 180 plus 20, that will be 200, right? That's basically what you're going to do. So the solution is over here, but I would suggest before you look at the solution, and pause the video and try to see if you can program this in your Eclipse. That'll be a nice exercise for you, and that will require the use of division. And you have to know about whether you got case 1 for integer division to get the quotients, or case number 2 to really get the result with precision. We talked about it, thoroughly in the previous part of the lecture. There's just some details I would like to point out to you for this example here. I just want to talk about it, but I would suggest don't look at the solution yet before you tried it. Okay, assuming that you have look at it, assuming that you already work on your own solution, let's now go over the solution very quickly, right? If you have not, pause the video. All right, let's see this. I just want to use some example test case. Let's say 500 seconds. So now you can see we say enter an integer for seconds to the user is a prompt, and then let's say the user simply enter 500. So that means the seconds variable over here is going to store 500. Okay, and then we're going to calculate two things. We're going to calculate the minutes. We're going to calculate the remaining seconds, right? So now we're going to use both the division operator and also the modulo operator, right? And the result should be quite obvious, but I want to show it to you. You can see seconds over here is integer, and also 60 here is also an integer. When you got integer and integer, it should give you the quotients. So now, what would be 500 divided by 60 get the quotients? It should be 6, right? And if you try to use modulo here, the remainder should be 20. Right? If you got any trouble with the underlying math about how to calculate quotients or remainder, please speak to me and then I'll be happy to help you. Otherwise, that's about for the example. And then I have some exercise for you. You can definitely try it out yourself. Modify the program, so that's the exercise over here. Modify the program so that it will display hours if necessary. For example, if you got this many seconds, you're going to say it's 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 9 seconds. Think about how you might do it, right? That'll be some exercise for you to try it out. All right, so that's about the second case study I would like to talk about. And then I'm now going to summarize about variable assignments quickly. Whenever you got the variable assignment of this particular form, remember we say the right-hand side is the source for the assignments, and the left-hand side is the target for the assignments. And based on what we have learned so far in this lecture, what can be the right-hand side over here? Let's summarize what can really occur. It's really important for you to know. Okay, let's look at one by one. So it could be some literal value. For example, if there's integer, you can simply put literal. It could be integer. Or if there's double, you can put 23.4, or character literal or string literal if the type is compatible, right? That's number one. And number two, a variable. So for variable, you can see over here, we simply say j is assigned to I. So what's I? You can see it's really important for the type to be compatible. You're trying to assign to j over here of type integer. And then the source over here, I, is also of type integer. You can see these two integers actually match. It's really important to match. But this is the variable. Okay. And the right-hand side can also be some expression. Remember, we also talked about how you can build complicated expression in the previous part of the lecture. And for this part here, let me also highlight it. You can see over here, for example, you can say integer j is assigned to I multiplied by 2. Right? It can be as complicated as you like. Remember something we did. We can say, for example, maybe something like I multiplied by, for example, I divided by j, multiply I modulo j. For example, and it can be as complicated as you like, but it has to be type correct. whatever value, whatever type, the type of expression must match the declare type of the assignment targets. So in this case, you can see this expression over here is integer. Does it match the declared type of the target, which is integer? Yes, it does, right? All right, finally, the one we just illustrated for the circle area calculation, also for the minutes calculation. So now you can see over here, I, the variable, the right-hand side can simply just be some input from the user, right? So it can be anything. But notice that here, this is next int. So which means it's guaranteed to return to you some integer. Does this match the declare type for the targets? Yes, indeed, it does. Okay, and then afterwards, you can also use a complicated expression if you like. Right. So this this slide over here really summarizes about what are the possible sources for the assignments. It can be literal, it can be variable, it can be expression, it can also be some input from the user. So these are the 4 possibilities that we're gonna use to really write your Java programs. Let's go back. Exactly what I just illustrated, and let's move on. The next topic will be about comparison of simple values. Let me just summarize something that might be useful for you. We will talk about comparison for values a little bit more in details next week when we talk about selections. But for now, let me just mention something that will be very useful for you to write your Java programs. In order to compare values, before we talk about objects later, right? So this will be the rule I would like you to stick to. Okay, whenever you want to compare values that's of type integer, double, character, or Boolean. So these are the so-called primitive type. Whenever you want to compare the value for primitive type, for example, you got some character C1, and then it's simply initialized to be A. And you want to know whether the stored value in C1 is the same as B, right? You can see C1 is really a character variable that store A. You want to ask whether the stored value over here is really equal to B. How can you do that? Apparently it's false, right? It's not the case. And the way to do it is by using double equal. Okay, so this will be the comparison for primitive type. Okay, whenever you want to compare integer, double, character, Boolean, use double equal. For now, the only exception to really compare values rather than using equal will be for the string. Let me mention something over here, but we'll definitely give you more details later when we start talking about objects after the reading week. For the string, it's so-called reference type, which is in a different category than primitive type. In order to really calculate string, you don't really, you should not use equal because they belong to different category. If you want to compare the contents of 2 strings, you have to use the equals method over here. Okay, so now let's say for example, if you got a string called S1, which is, let's say, for example, remember we talked about where the assignment source might come from. I just chose one of them. So let's say the user enters some string S1. We want to know what that value is. For example, whether or not the value that the user entered from the console, right? Let's say in the console, the user enters something over here. We want to know whether this string over here is has the contents quit. We want to know. In that case, you don't want to say S1 equals quit. This is not the way to go. Okay, this one will compile. Okay, won't crash. It will not crash, but it will not work. You can think about this is more like a logical error. I will explain a little bit more why using equals over here will be considered as a logical error whenever you're trying to do reference type. But in this case, you have to use equals over here. Okay, that's the point I would like to illustrate. Let me summarize quickly before I move on to the last topic. Whenever you want to compare primitive type, int, double character boolean, use equal equal to compare the value. Now, the only one you want to use something other than equals equals will be for the string variables or string values. In that case, you want to say string variable dot equals, and then whatever value it is. So that's some principle I would like you to bear in mind. All right, let's move on to the next topic. So here, just follow up. What would be the outputs difference between if you want to output some character literal and also output some string literal over here, right? So now if you output these two to the console, what would be the difference? We kind of covered this briefly when we talk about literals. The answer is it's going to be the same. It will just be a single character A. However, in your program, if you try to compare these two, so either you want to say, you want to compare these two, right? It's a character, right? It seems to say equal equal comparison. In that case, it will be an invalid comparison. Because think about this is like a string and this is like a character. You cannot compare two values of different types. String and character are considered as different types. Okay, so that's exactly what I just mentioned. And this is also something I mentioned as well when we talk about literals. Just be careful. You should not compare string together with character, even though their console output look the same, but their types are different. In your program, everything has to be type correct. Okay, the last topic very quickly. Just about whenever you're building your console application, you might be wondering what the difference is between println and also print. Okay, the principle, as I write over here, is when you say println, it will be as if you want to say whenever you say println, it will be as if you say print something plus the new line at the end. Let's see some example. Let's say I simply say print and print. So that means there will be no new line in between hello and also world. So that means you will simply get hello world. What if I really want some new line, some like an enter after the hello, between the hello and the world? I can say, for example, print line over here hello, and also print line over here world. So that will give me hello world. Let's just see one more example over here. Let's see over here. Let's say we got two string values. We got A and also B, S1 and S2. Let's see the different scenarios. Okay, you can try to see version 1, version 2, and also version 3. You can pause the video and think about what the console outputs might be before you see the solution. All right, assuming that you have thought about it, let's see the solution. The first one is simply got, when I say print, I really meant system.out.print. I just want to write in the short form. But in your program, you will have to say system.out.print. And when I say print line, I meant system.out.print line. So what if I say print and print? Well, it's going to be S1 followed by S2. So it's going to be A followed by B, right? A followed by B with no new line. What about this? Well, print line and print line. So it's going to be A and then a new line, and then you got B. Okay? What about this one over here? This one's interesting. Can we say over here, let's say we just do as is. So S1, so which will be A, and then followed by some new line character. And that means we're going to go to the next line. And then we go S2. And then we got B. Okay? An extra exercise for you. What if I say over here, let me just put another version over here. Let's say print S1, print line, and then S2. What would that be, right? A variance to this example here, I simply got rid of this particular new line over here, right? So after the print, we're going to get A over here, and then after that, we actually don't have any new line. So that means S2, which is B, is going to follow immediately after it, right? And then we have the new line. So, and then the cursor, you can think about the cursor will be here. So that's still AB. However, we got some extra new line character because of the print line here. Right, so that's the difference between print and println. So you just gotta experience with it, so you will see exactly what the difference is. It's subtle but important to note. Alright, so we are now done with all the topics for elementary programming. I understand it's a long lecture for the very first week, but it's really worthwhile to really finish all the contents for this week's lecture about elementary programming, so you will be ready to do your lab exercises and to learn the more advanced concepts in Java. Beyond this lecture, very quickly. So for every lecture, I'll try to show to you what you should really, what you can consider doing to really strengthen your understanding. So number one, I want you to go back to the imported project we did in the very beginning of the lecture, right? So remember, that's the project for week number 1. Create some console tester over there, some console application with the main method, and try out the examples given in the slides. Okay, so there are actually many examples which I didn't put in that project. That's intentional. I really want you to type the programs yourself and play with it. Number 2, as I mentioned in the beginning, videos 1 to 7 from the previous tutorial series for Winter 19 1021 is also highly relevant. I encourage you to really do. I know it's a lot of time to really watch the video, but I would suggest if you really want some extra practice, that's the way to go. I'm sure that's going to be beneficial for you should you choose to do it. Okay, and then if you're interested in seeing more about data types, you can also click on this link. You can see some official documentation from Java. Okay, all right, that's about the very first week of elementary programming, and next week we'll start learning about selections.